I don't see any prospect for an agreement within the present paradigm at all. Now, Europe is a complete block on the whole process. I mean, their aim is to undermine it because they want the war to continue. They want a ceasefire, not a solution. They want a ceasefire in Ukraine so that they can go back in, rearm, retrain. They say this explicitly. It's not my presumption. They want to retrain the Ukrainians and they want to continue the war with Russia because our elites in Europe are desperate. They have nothing else to hold the European Union and the whole NATO together other than flying the flag. Let's rally to the flag of Ukraine, part of Europe. It's not part of Europe. They're Slavs, just as Russia are Slavs. Genetically, they have no connection with Europe any more than Russia is a European state. So, but let's, support our European family against those dangerous Slavs in the East. And this is the only thing, because otherwise everything will fracture. I was in the European Union working for the security and foreign policy chief for several years, Javier Solana, who was a former Secretary General of NATO, and I was part of his staff and lent by the government to him for that purpose. And I remember him saying to me, the Americans are really pressing us to take on the new Europeans, as the Americans called it. This is Poland, the Baltic states, all of those former Soviet elements. And he said, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to break Europe ultimately if we do it. And you know why they did it? Because, old Europe, France and Germany, voted against going to war in Iraq, the second Iraqi war. You remember the French said, no, we disagree. So America started empowering, if you like, new Europe to become the tail that wags the European dog, which it is. I mean, the Baltic states have almost all the top jobs in Europe, despite being, pinpoints on the map. And there are great fractures between the Mediterranean states and the austerity states, all these things.
This is the core issue. Europe doesn't want peace. It wants a pause. A ceasefire is just a breathing space to rearm, retrain, and reboot a war they cannot win but cannot politically abandon. If the fighting truly stopped, the EU's internal fractures would be exposed instantly. War has become the glue holding a failing project together.
Devoid of morality in Europe now. This is just cynical power plays that are taking place, I'm sorry to say. I mean, don't believe all that talk about European values. They have been overridden and sort of blanked out during this period. And so what are they looking for? Well, Europe needs, as Europe had in the past, it needs resources. It needs cheap energy. And now it is bereft of all of that. It's bereft of gas, natural pipe gas. It's bereft of now even refined products under sanction. Our energy costs, if you take a country like Britain, are the highest in the world. The electricity costs are the highest in the world. Energy costs in Europe are the highest, almost bar any. It's about 6 times what you do have in Europe. What is your manufacturing base? What is your business model? They're at odds with the United States. They're at odds with China. There's no business model. And indeed, they suffer from a fractured economy, a completely bifurcated economy. We have 10% in Europe who live the life of Riley, who are what I call in the cornucopia sector of the economy, and the rest are slowly sinking. I'm talking to you from Europe, where there has been no increase in real wages since joining the euro, which was in 93, I think. 92, 93, it joined it. A slow decline in real wages for that long. That's a long, long time. And that's the same and people are getting desperate. They're getting to the edge. And the elites know that. They don't know what to do. They're desperate. They're desperate to try and keep their position, and they're desperate about their economic situation.
And beneath it all is a brutal economic truth. Europe needs cheap energy to survive. It always has. Without affordable gas, fuel, and industrial inputs, the entire European model collapses. That's exactly what's happening now. Manufacturing is shrinking. Electricity prices are exploding, and industries that once powered Europe are shutting down or relocating. A continent built on industry cannot survive on ideology alone.
Which is now the most popular mainstream party in Germany. And they have said we need to have a relationship with, and they have many more of the young people were voting for AfD than the traditional established parties. And they say we want to have a relationship with Russia, and we need to have an understanding for energy sources. Germany produces high-end, or used to produce high-end engineering products on the basis of cheap Russian gas. And you take that away, and the rest of the economy is in complete decline. It is breaking up, and unemployment is rising just across Europe as a consequence. So what happens? They had an election recently in Germany, it wasn't a national election, a regional election in the area, and suddenly all of the AfD candidates were eliminated or died suddenly, 7 of them. And the election was a collapse. And look at it, anywhere you try and start a party that advocates against a membership of NATO or joining or having relations with Russia, and the party leaders, suddenly they will find some sort of economic scandal or some sexual pedicule that will enable them to be banned. They're still talking about banning AfD, the most popular party. This is called the cordon sanitaire in Europe. Since the war, the center parties have refused to allow what they call the far left or the far right, and the far right is not far right, and the far left is not far left. It is just these two. So it's just the center. And what Europe has done is to demolish all the bridges to the future.
This is the moment Europe's elites fear the most, when ordinary people begin choosing parties that challenge the system instead of defending it. The rise of the AfD isn't an accident, it's a symptom. Young Germans know their economy was once powered by affordable Russian energy, and they've watched that advantage vanish overnight. When a nation loses its industrial base, it loses its future, and people are responding accordingly.
Going to escalation. I think that's where, I think ultimately the West will not be able to accept with equanimity the defeat of NATO by Russia on the battlefield, and that it'll find that, you'll find people who will say, I just cannot imagine living in a world where Europe or America is not directing the world, that Russia is blocking us. I cannot imagine it. It cannot happen. We will not allow it to happen. And so they go on saying these crazy things about, 1.5 million Russians dead, and they can't, their army is falling apart and things. They don't believe it themselves, but they cannot imagine a world in which the West does not give the orders.
This is the psychological wall the West cannot break through. The idea that it might lose. For decades, Western power wasn't just military strength, it was an identity, a worldview, the belief that Washington and Brussels set the rules and everyone else followed them. A Russian victory on the battlefield doesn't just challenge NATO, it shatters an entire mental framework built over generations.
That's exactly what Putin said in your little piece that you put up earlier. He always says these things in a very measured and clean way, but he said, our people require and need us to complete the special military operation in its entirety. That means if you like, denazification, neutralization of Ukraine, and then to have a political process from that position. And, you know, as a former negotiator, I recognize it sometimes when there is just too great an oppositional process. You know, there has to be a trial of strength. And when the trial of strength has happened, then possibly you can negotiate your boundaries and your solution to go in and get some sort of solution from it.
This point is crucial. Putin's language is always controlled and deliberate, but the message is unmistakable. Russia intends to finish what it started before engaging in any political settlement, and whether one agrees or disagrees, it reflects a hard reality of diplomacy. You negotiate from the position you've secured on the ground, not from the position you wish you had.